After Donald Trump left the White House, the political tension that had built during his presidency did not dissolve. Instead, it followed him into the months after the 2020 election, reaching a new flashpoint in Georgia. The state, once seen as firmly conservative, transformed into a battleground of legal and political disputes. Trump's refusal to accept the election results and his accusations of voting irregularities created deep skepticism among many supporters. Georgia, which unexpectedly shifted Democratic, became the centerpiece of these doubts. State officials were pushed into recounts, audits, and repeated explanations as national attention intensified. For many Americans watching from afar, Georgia became more than a state. It became a symbol of a nation wrestling with its own democratic identity. And when Trump called Georgia's Secretary of State urging a review of the vote count, critics saw it as potential interference. Supporters insisted he was pressing for transparency. This moment set the stage for a prosecution that would test how the justice system handles a former president and challenge the country's understanding of accountability. Welcome to Political Plot, where we cut through the noise to reveal the power plays shaping American politics. Today we're diving into the escalating legal, political, and social storm surrounding Donald Trump's prosecution in Georgia, exploring how the allegations, courtroom maneuvers, media battles, and national reactions reveal the fragility and resilience of American democracy. It is a story about accountability colliding with polarization, and how one case could shape the country's future far beyond the courtroom. The case against Trump centered on accusations that he attempted to influence Georgia's election outcome. His critics pointed to his repeated claims of widespread fraud, arguing that these allegations eroded trust in a legitimate process. They cited months of investigations and court rulings that found no evidence to support his claims. For them, his rhetoric and his communication with state officials raised serious concerns about improper pressure. To these critics, the danger was not only the content of the claims, but the scale of influence behind them. A former president amplifying unfounded accusations can shift public perception in ways that have long-term consequences for democracy itself. Supporters countered that Trump was within his rights to question an election he believed was flawed. They argued that political leaders often challenge results, and that criminalizing his speech could restrict political debate. In their eyes, raising concerns was not only allowed but expected from someone who felt responsible for the integrity of the election system. The call requesting officials to find additional votes became a dividing line. Critics viewed it as an abuse of power, a moment where personal political interest may have crossed into official pressure. Supporters insisted it was simply part of his duty to ensure accuracy. Talk of whether Trump might be photographed in a booking process added another layer of symbolic weight. To some, it represented equality before the law. To others, it seemed like political theatrics and a media spectacle designed to humiliate. As the case moved forward, both sides entered a complex legal contest that blended constitutional debates with political strategy. Trump's lawyers leaned heavily on the First Amendment, arguing that his statements were protected expressions of political belief. Opponents questioned whether speech that could influence public trust in elections should be shielded. The defense also invoked executive privilege, asserting that Trump's conversations with officials were tied to his role as president. Critics countered that privilege is not meant to protect discussions that might relate to wrongdoing. The larger question became how far executive protections extend once a president leaves office. Legal motions challenged evidence, disputed witness credibility, and sought dismissals. Each ruling from the court shaped strategy and intensified debate. Supporters worried the proceedings could set a precedent that limits presidential discretion. They feared future leaders might hesitate to question election systems or engage in difficult conversations with state officials. Critics insisted the case was necessary to preserve the rule of law. They argued that avoiding prosecution would send a dangerous message that high office offers immunity from accountability. These legal maneuvers unfolded in a political atmosphere already stretched thin by years of division. The courtroom became a place where interpretations of democracy itself collided. The prosecution sought to prove intent. The defense sought to cast doubt on motives. Observers from both sides watched anxiously as hearings exposed additional details about the communication, strategy, and decision-making that took place behind the scenes during the post-election period. And with every piece of evidence introduced, the political stakes grew sharper. The unfolding case stirred passionate responses across the country. Trump's detractors saw the prosecution as a long-awaited correction and a reaffirmation that no leader is beyond accountability. They viewed it as essential for restoring faith in democratic norms. The case, to them, served as a reminder that institutions must remain strong even when challenged by powerful figures. Supporters responded with equal intensity, believing the case was politically motivated and designed to weaken Trump's influence. They questioned the motivations behind the timing and believed the prosecution reflected broader partisan conflict. Many believed that elites and institutions were using legal mechanisms as tools of political warfare. Media outlets amplified these divides. Networks emphasizing legal concerns reinforced the views of Trump's critics, framing the prosecution as a critical test for democracy. Outlets portraying the case as overreach energized his supporters, painting Trump as a victim of selective enforcement. Social media magnified the divides even more, turning the case into a sprawling battle of narratives where each side found validation within their own communities. Conspiracy theories blended with legitimate debates, opinions hardened into identities, and the public found itself drowning in competing versions of reality. This reaction highlighted the difficulty of establishing shared facts in an era defined by ideological fragmentation. As the trial date neared, expectations intensified. Critics anticipated a process where evidence could be examined openly, hoping for clarity and accountability. They saw the courtroom as a place where emotion could be replaced by documentation and testimony. Supporters expressed concern that political pressures might influence the proceeding. They wanted reassurance that due process would be honored and worried that the trial could be used as a political tool. Both sides waited to see how witnesses would respond, how prosecutors would frame their arguments, and whether the defense could introduce reasonable doubt. For many Americans, the trial became a test of the nation's ability to separate law from ideology. Would jurors be able to examine evidence without political bias? Would the judge maintain neutrality under immense scrutiny? Would the defense succeed in portraying Trump as a political target? Or would the prosecution convince the public that the law must be applied evenly, regardless of status? The trial was poised to become not only a legal event, but also a barometer for the nation's ability to handle political conflict within institutional boundaries. If Trump were to face legal consequences, critics would interpret it as proof that democratic systems still function. They believed it would signal that even those who once held the highest office are subject to the law. Supporters, however, might see such an outcome as a validation of their belief that institutions are biased against him. This could deepen polarization and fuel mistrust. The political implications for the Republican Party would also be substantial. Some members might rally behind Trump if they believe he was unfairly targeted, while others might push the party toward a new direction. Leadership struggles could intensify, reshaping the party's identity for years to come. Globally, the trial could influence how other nations view American stability and leadership. Allies and adversaries alike closely observe how the United States handles internal conflict. A conviction could lead some nations to see American democracy as resilient. Others might interpret the prosecution of a former head of state as evidence of instability. Regardless of outcome, the case forces a confrontation with fundamental questions about accountability, political identity, and democratic resilience. Discussions about whether prosecuting Trump could trigger widespread unrest reflect the charged environment surrounding his political legacy. Some analysts worry that his most committed supporters could react strongly if they believe the legal system treated him unfairly. They point to the nation's high level of polarization and the intensity of Trump's connection with his base. Others argue that while tension is likely, a true civil conflict is improbable. They emphasize that most Americans remain committed to peaceful processes and believe accountability strengthens democratic institutions. The debate reveals how unpredictable the intersection of law and politics has become. It underscores the importance of measured leadership, clear communication, and institutional stability. Ultimately, the question of unrest highlights how deeply the nation's divisions run and how essential it is to navigate the trial's outcome with care. What happens in Georgia will not stay in Georgia. It will echo through Congress, state legislatures, the media ecosystem, and the public consciousness. The case is more than a legal dispute. It is a reflection of a nation standing at a crossroads, deciding whether its commitment to democracy can withstand the weight of its internal fractures.